Hello class, and welcome to your video lesson for CSS Fonts. So in this lesson, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about several different CSS rules that we can use to change the fonts within our web pages. And we're going to be working specifically within your Freshman 101 assignment to introduce these different concepts. Now before we begin, real quick, fonts are the words that are on your web page. So every time we write an individual word or sentences, headings, different things like that that use individual letters, okay, we consider those fonts. All right, we can add all kinds of different styles, different positions to these fonts within our web pages. Now up until this point, we really haven't done a whole lot of style changes to our fonts. We've certainly spent plenty of time adding font, right? But the focus here today is going to be on what can we do to make the fonts look more interesting, make them look a little bit more creative. You're going to have a lot of artistic expression here with changing the appearance of your pages by adding style changes to your fonts. So what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and we are going to jump into our sandbox out in Code.hs. Okay, and what I want you to do is I want you to open up your Freshman 101 project. Okay, now after your Freshman 101 project is opened up, what we are going to do is we are going to make a whole new page or a whole new file within the project. So we're going to go over to the left side of the Code.hs screen here, and we're going to click on New Plus, and we're going to select File. Okay, and we're going to name this new file CSS Font.html. Okay, so capital C, capital S, capital S, capital F, ont.html, and we click Add File. Okay, and there's our new page. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the appearance of my screen here. I just like the different look. I do not really prefer the File tab bar, so I'm going to turn that off here in my settings. And there we go. Okay, this is a matter of preference. You can certainly make the page using both appearances, but this is sort of the way that I like to do my coding in. So we have our CSS font page. What we're going to do is we are going to kind of start fresh here, and we're going to put in all of our basic HTML tags, starting with our doc type tag. Okay, and then our HTML tags, opening and closing head tag. In there we'll add our title tags, opening and closing, and we are going to be doing CSS, so we'll put our style tags in between our head tags as well. Okay, and we'll jump down and make a space below our closing head tag and put in our opening body tag, and the closing body tag will be added by Code.hs. So there's our basic HTML tags, nothing new. Okay, these should be pretty kind of in your memory at this point. They should be fairly easy to add to any web page that we create. Okay, we're going to go ahead and add our title to our page, and we're going to call it CSS Font Styles. So once again, that's going to go in between the title tags. Okay, and we're going to add a comment just as a little descriptor, okay, as to what we're going to be doing on this page for anybody that might open up the coding. It's not going to appear over on the visible website, but if somebody were to get into the source code, they would be able to see this comment. Okay, so we're going to type place all web content between these body tags. Now we know this. Okay, we know that we have to put all of our visible content in between our body tags. However, we just wanted to put a comment there, just sort of as practice and as a reminder of how to use the comments. Okay, so that's going to go in between the opening and closing body tag. Now what we're going to have to do is we have to set up our links. All right, we've done this multiple times now at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my index page. All right, and you know what? My index page has all the extra links from when we were learning about links several weeks ago. So I'm going to go to maybe my list page. This will be a little bit better. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to click after or out at the end of my last link for CSS background, and I need to add the new link to my newly created CSS font web page or file. Okay, I'm going to close the opening link tag. I'm going to add my text for CSS font. All right, so now I have this link only on my list page. What I need to do is I need to I'm going to copy all the links. Okay, so I've just selected them. I've right-clicked. I clicked copy. Okay, now they're on my clipboard. I'm going to go back to CSS font. Okay, I'm going to click on the row below where my comment ended, and I'm just going to paste all those links. Okay, so now CSS font has all the links on it. Right? I need to take just my CSS font link, copy it, and I need to put it on all the remaining web pages because they have the previously created links, so I just need to add the new one to these pre-existing pages. So there's my table. I already did it to list. I'll go into image, go to CSS color. Okay, now with CSS color, you're going to have all the CSS style rules, so we have to scroll down a little bit. There's my background link. There's my font link. And then on CSS background, the same thing. We'll save it. We'll run it. Okay, and we can kind of take a look through. Oh, I missed my index page, so I need to go back to that. Okay, and this is why you double check to make sure that you don't miss any. So I'll add my CSS font link there. Now I'll save it, run it again. Okay, there's my CSS font link. I go to the page. There's all my other links. Say, I'll go to CSS color. There's CSS font. You want to go through and you want to double check to make sure that all your pages have all your links. Okay, it's just good web design, making sure that it's easy for the user to navigate directly from one page on a site to any other page within the site. You don't want to have backtracking in order to move to different parts of your website. That's poor web design. All right, so now our links are set up. We are going to go ahead and we're going to go back to our CSS font page, and we're going to go ahead and start to add some content here. Okay, we have to add the content first to the page so that we can then add our CSS style rules and kind of see what they do. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop down. I'm going to put my cursor out at the end of my final link. I'm going to hit enter one time to drop down to a new blank line of coding. And on this first blank line, I'm going to add a heading, an h1 tag, and I'm going to put CSS styles, CSS font styles. Okay, I'm going to drop down to the next line of coding. I'm going to put a paragraph tag, and we're going to type a few sentences here. This web page will demonstrate, and you want to go ahead and you want to type exactly what I'm typing here, adding CSS style to the fonts of a web page. We will use embedded CSS rules. Embedded simply means that it's embedded within the coding in between the style tags up above. Okay, these rules must be added between the style tags which are located between the head tags. All right, so there's our paragraph. Take a moment and go ahead and type that out just like you see it here on the screen. Okay, now after you have the paragraph added, we're going to save and we're going to run just to make sure that everything got added properly, and it appears that it did. We have our heading and our paragraph. So now let's go ahead and we're going to add our first CSS style rule. All right, this rule is going to be applied to our heading. All right, so the way that CSS works, remember you put the tag that you want to be modified. Okay, so just H1. After the H1, okay, we go ahead and we put in our opening curly bracket. Okay, you hit enter and your closing curly bracket will be brought in automatically. The CSS rule will go in between those curly brackets and it'll get applied to the H1 tag. So what we're going to do first is we're going to change the color of our fonts. Now we've done this before, okay, but not using CSS. So this is the CSS way of doing it. Previously we did it inline style directly in the H1 tag that was in our body tags. Now we're doing it the embedded CSS way. Moving forward, when you want to make style changes, you want to use CSS. Okay, and what this is going to do is it's going to change the color of this heading over here to a blue color. Okay, now while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and we're going to also change the color of our paragraph. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll add the P, okay, opening curly bracket, closing curly bracket. Within that, we'll do color, colon, green. So now the color of our paragraph will be green. Okay, and you can see that the change was applied. Okay, the heading is now blue and the paragraph is now green. All right, so just a different way to go about doing something that we have previously learned. Okay, and you're always welcome to do customized colors. Remember, if you go out to Google, okay, we'll just review this real quick. You go out to Google, you do a color picker search. You're going to get the color picker tool here within Google. Okay, and you can choose any sort of customized color, you know, using the slide bar here and the shade adjuster up above with this little circle. So say that I wanted this sort of bluish purple color. All I would have to do is copy the hex value right here. Okay, bring it back into my coding. I'll replace blue with this custom color. Okay, maybe I wanted a more deep purple color for my paragraph. Okay, maybe something like this. Once again, copy the hex value. Replace the words green. I will save it and run it. And you notice that the colors have changed according to the customized color that I chose. So you can go ahead, you can choose your own colors. By no means do you have to use these colors that I chose, but go out, use the color picker tool to get a custom color for your heading and your paragraph. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a little bit more content to our page. Okay, we're going to add some subheadings. So we're going to make a space between our H1 tags where we have our largest heading and our paragraph. And in between there, what we're going to do is we're going to add a H2 tag for a slightly smaller heading. And in there, we're going to type formatting text. Okay, we'll click out at the end and we'll make an even smaller heading using an H3 tag. And we're just going to type formatting text again. Okay, we're not really worried about the content of this page. The focus is more on adding style to the content. We'll save and we'll run. Okay, and here's our subheadings for formatting text and formatting text again. So the next thing I want to show you is alignment. All right, so alignment is where the text will be located on the page in terms of left to right. All right, and there's three different types of alignment that we're going to use. There's left alignment, which is not going to look any different than what you see here currently, because when you add words or fonts to a page, it is automatically aligned to the left. So we're going to look at the rule, but just recognize that you're not going to see a difference. We're going to look at center alignment, which is going to put it into the middle of the page, and then we're going to look at right alignment, which will by default put the words starting on the right side, and then as you add to it, it'll move to the left. So let's go ahead and add some alignment CSS rules, and it's going to be pretty clear to you what sort of change this does. So first off, let's go ahead and add a center alignment to our H1 tag. Now we already added the H1 tag in between our style tags, so all we can do, or all we have to do, is add another CSS rule to apply against it. So when you want to align text, the CSS rule is text dash align colon, and then you tell the computer how you want to align it. So we'll put our H1 tag center aligned, which is going to put it in the middle. Okay, and then we're going to align our H2 and our H3 tags. Now we haven't added those into our coding yet, so what we will do is we'll go ahead and we'll click after our closing curly bracket after the style rule for the P tag. We'll go ahead and put H2 in, opening curly bracket, okay, and we hit enter. Closing curly bracket gets brought in automatically. Text align, colon, and we'll align the H2 tag to the left. Like I said, you're not going to see a difference. Okay, in the H3 tag, opening curly bracket, here we'll align the H3 tag to the right. Okay, now we'll save. We'll run. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up because it's a little bit clearer to see in full screen mode. Click on CSS Font. And you can see now how the positioning or the alignment of our heading tags have changed. CSS Font is now in the middle, okay, instead of over to the left. Our H2 tag for formatting text, that looks the same because it's aligned to the left. And like I said, by default, font is automatically aligned to the left. So you're not seeing a difference there. But then if you go to the H3 tag, you see, oh, it now is over to the right side of the screen. It starts on the right. As you add words to it, it'll push to the left. With left alignment, you start on the left side of your screen, and as you add words to it, it'll push to the right. All right, so just a difference of left and right alignment. Once again, these are style choices. There's not a right way or a wrong way to do it. It's simply a matter of what the designer wants to do when they're creating their page. All right, so now let's go ahead and we'll close this. All right, that is text alignment. The next rule, CSS rule available to us, is indentation. Now, indentation you should have used at some point in the past, maybe when you were writing a paper for maybe history class, English class, whatever it might have been. Whenever you start a new paragraph within any sort of writing, the proper way to present it is with an indent. So the first line of that paragraph will be pushed just a little bit to the right. It's not going to start all the way to the left of the page. There will be a little bit of a gap there. And then it's just the first line, the next line, and every line after it will start all the way to the right. So we do have a paragraph on our CSS font page. So if we were doing a proper writing and we wanted this to be grammatically correct with proper indentation, how could we do that effect? Okay, you might be tempted to say, well, we would just text align it to the right. That would not be correct, because what's going to happen is all the content will get pushed to the right. We only want the first line of the paragraph to be pushed oh so slightly to the right, not all the way to the right, just a little bit. So if we want that to occur, we have to use a text indent CSS rule. So we're going to apply this to our paragraphs. We want to find the CSS rules, okay, that are going to apply to the P tag. We only have one so far, so we'll click after the color rule, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to add text dash indent colon 50 px. Okay, so the px stands for pixels. When you are indenting, you measure the amount of indentation in pixels. All right, so we'll save it, we'll run it. Okay, and you notice that just the first line of the paragraph got pushed over to the right. Now the amount of that push is 50 pixels in distance. Okay, you can adjust this to increase the indent by increasing the amount of pixels, or you could reduce the amount of the indent by having the text indent set to less pixels. So if we change this to 10, it would not get pushed as far to the right. If we changed it to 100, it would get pushed, twice as far to the right. It's up to the user how far they want to make that indentation, but 50 pixels is a pretty standard indent. Right? So there is our next CSS style rule, text indentation. So now we're just going to keep moving through here, and we're going to add text decoration. Now text decoration is a way of adding lines to your fonts. All right. So we have three types of text decoration. We have text overline, text line through, and text underline. Now of these three, the one that's most commonly used is text underline. Text underline will add a line directly underneath whatever words you want to add to the page. And typically text underline is used as a way to express emphasis. Like if you want to draw attention specifically to something, underlining it might be a way to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to add all the CSS font rules for text decoration, and then we'll take a look at them. So we're going to apply these to our headings. So we're going to work on our H1 CSS style rules first. we'll add text dash decoration, colon, and the first one we'll do is overline. Okay, now overline is, of the three, the one that's probably used the least. Okay, now we'll go down to H2. We'll once again do text decoration, and we will do line dash through. This will put a line directly through the font. It'll almost look like it got crossed out. And then we'll go down to our H3 tag, and we'll do text dash decoration, colon, underline, all one word. Okay, we'll save, and we will run, so we can take a look at this. All right, and you can see that our text decoration added lines to each of the headings. Now look at the position of the line. Okay, for the H1 tag, the line is above the main heading. Okay, so this is something that if the user wants to add it, they certainly can. In terms of practical applications, it's sort of limited. Okay, there's not really a whole lot of reasons why someone would need to add this, but if they want to, they certainly can. Okay, then we have line through, and you can see that it went directly through the middle of the font. All right, this can sometimes be used if a person is making a list and they want to communicate to somebody what items of the list have been completed, what items of the list still remain. Well, one of the ways that you could show that something's been completed on the list is to add a strike through or a line through CSS rule to that particular line item. So that is something that is available if the user wants it. And then underline, we already talked about, can be used to draw emphasis to a particular area of a page. And you see that the line is underneath the font. So that is text decoration. Okay, next up we have text shadow. Okay, now text shadow is a way of, I think of all of them, probably adding the most artistic sort of style to fonts. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add it, and then we'll take a look at it. So we're going to add text shadow to our H1 tag here at the top of our page. And the way you set it up is just text dash shadow colon 3px 2px and then red. Okay, so let's go ahead and save it and run it. We'll take a look at it, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so you can see here that like a shadow, a secondary font, has been placed behind the original font. Okay, and it sort of gives this appearance that the font is almost like popping off of the screen. Okay, but what we did was we gave the computer 3 directions about how this shadow should look. All right, we'll start with the red part. Okay, this simply tells the computer what color the shadow should be. So you can see it here. We have the initial blue text, and then behind it the shadow is in red. So you can tell the computer whatever sort of color you want for your shadows that you add to your texts. Okay, the 3px, this tells the computer should the shadow be above or below the existing font. Okay, so if you look at the line, okay, the overline, you can see that the red line is slightly below the blue line. Okay, and the reason for that is because the number was positive. So if the first number is positive, the shadow is going to go below the original font. But we can change this. Okay, we can change this to negative 3px, and if you change that, you'll notice you know what? We're going to go back. I kind of explained that incorrectly. The 3px, rather, it's a measurement of left to right. Okay, so now if you look at negative 3px, the shadow is to the left of the initial font. Okay, the red is to the left of the blue. Okay, you can see that here with the C and CSS font. If we go back and we make it the way that it was before with the regular positive 3px, okay, the red is now to the right of the blue initial text. Okay, so the first number positions it left to right. All right, so if you have a positive, the shadow will be to the right of the original text. If you have a negative, the shadow will be to the left of the original text. Okay, so it's certainly up to the user how they want to position it. Now you can also increase the amount of the shadow. Okay, you can make these numbers bigger and it'll stretch the shadow out. So let's go ahead and just playing around here. Let's say I make this 15px, and I save and I run. I've also changed it back to negative. Okay, so my shadow now is to the left, and you can see how it's further pulled to the left, farther away from the initial font. Okay, now if you're looking at this, you're probably saying, well, this doesn't look very good. You're right. Okay, when you are using shadows, sometimes less is more. You want to keep the pixel distance of the shadow away from the original font to be relatively small. So somewhere in the neighborhood of like 1 to 6 pixels typically is okay. Okay, if you start to get further than that, it starts to look very distorted, very difficult to read, and that's not what we're trying to achieve with these fonts. Okay, so we put it back the way it was, and that looks a lot better. Okay, now the second amount, this is what I initially said, this determines how far above or below the original font the shadow is going to be. So you can also position the shadow below, like it is now, with a positive number, or you can position the shadow above with a negative number. So look, the red is slightly below the original blue. Now I've changed it to negative. I rerun it. Okay, and now the red is above the original blue. Okay, so you can experiment and play around with these by making the pixel counts positive or negative, and that'll flip it from being above or below or left to right, and then you can also stretch it by increasing the pixel count. Okay, so that's a style choice that, like I said, it's probably the most artistic of what we're going to look at today, and if used correctly, it can add a certain appeal to any web page. Right, so that's shadows. Next up, we want to take a look at fonts, okay, and specifically font families. All right. Up until this point, all the words have looked the same. Now, there's all kinds of different fonts out there, okay? Different ways that the letters themselves will actually look. So what we're going to do is we're going to play around here with some serif, sans serif, and monospace fonts, right? And we'll talk about what those actually are here. So what we're going to do is we're going to work in our p tag. So we're going to add a new font rule. This is going to be font-family. Okay, and what we're going to type is Arial, and then we're going to type a comma, and we're going to type Helvetica, Helvetica, and then we're going to do another comma, and we're going to say sans serif. All right, and we're going to save and we're going to run. Okay, and you notice that our words, okay, the individual appearance of the words themselves has changed. Okay, and the reason for that is this is now Arial font. All right, we've changed the name of the font, and with that we've changed the appearance of the font. Okay, we told the computer through our coding what sort of font we want. Now let's take a moment to talk about why we had to write 3 different things here to just get the Arial font. You would think that we would just type Arial and that would be enough. When you are doing font families, it is best practice to add additional information. Okay, so we typed Arial here, and our first choice is Arial font. That's what we hope that the computer will be able to provide. However, some coding programs may not be able to recognize certain font names. It may not be available. So what you typically do is you give a secondary choice. Okay, here it was Helvetica, and that's basically our way of saying, all right, computer, if you don't have Arial, then give me Helvetica. All right, and then we also say at the end, all right, if you don't have Arial, you don't have Helvetica, give me any sans serif font that you might have. All right, sans serif means that there's no additional little lines out at the end of the letters. All right, so if we take a look here at the paragraph, all right, and I want you to look specifically at the S, okay, in CSS right here on the second line. If you look at the tips of the S, there's no little like wing or little tip out at the end. But if you go up here to our H1 tag and you look at the end of the S, you see there's like a little tail out at the end. It's like an additional little horizontal line that is added to it. Okay, the reason for that is our H1 tag is in a serif font. Serifs have those additional little extra lines at the tips of certain letters. All right, sans serif fonts do not have that. Okay, it gets rid of those additional little tails, and it's just style preference. The one thing to be aware of, if we're thinking about accessibility, typically Sans serif fonts are a little bit more accessible. They're a little bit clearer and easier to read for maybe people that have vision impairments. So you want to know who your audience is for your sites, okay, and consider accessibility. Who's going to be reading it? Is it the general public, where everybody might be taking a look? Well, then you might want to consider more of a sans serif font. If you know it's for a specific group of people and you know that there's not going to be any accessibility issues, then you might be okay with serif fonts because you like that style. All right? It's just a matter of preference, but you do always have to keep that concept of accessibility in your mind when you're designing pages. All right? Now let's go ahead and let's take a look at a serif font, and this one is not going to look very different from what we currently see. Okay, we're going to go ahead and add it to our H1 tag. Okay, so once again we're going to type font-family, we're going to type colon. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to put a set of quotation marks, and we're going to type Times New Roman. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and click to the right of the closing quotation mark, and we're going to type Times, and then we're going to add serif. Okay, now the reason that we had to put quotation marks around Times New Roman, anytime you choose a font that has more than one word, it has to be in the quotation marks. Okay, so if there's a space, you got to have the quotation marks around it for the computer to recognize it. So we're going to save it and we're going to run it. Now take note of what this looks like. Doesn't look a whole lot different. Okay, it's slightly different, but not much at all. Okay, the reason for that is because we had an existing serif font. Okay, and the Times New Roman did not look really much different from the existing font that CodeHS puts in automatically, but it still is a serif font. Okay, it still has those little tails at the end of the letters. Okay, the last sort of font family that we're going to do is monospace. Now, monospace looks the most unique of all the font families. Okay, and we're going to add it to our H2 tag. Okay, so we're going to go down and we're going to type font-family, colon, we're going to type Courier New inside of our quotation marks. Okay, then we're going to put quotation marks again because this second font style is also two words. It's Lucida Console. Okay, and then we're going to put parenthesis or quotation mark monospace, not quotation mark, sorry, comma, monospace. All right, we're going to save and we're going to run. Okay, and you see that our H2 tag has now changed in appearance. That's monospace text. Okay, monospace means that each individual letter will take up the same amount of space as every other letter. All right, that's not true for serif and sans serif fonts. Some letters take up more space than others, depending upon what they are. Like an S will take up more space than an I. Okay, but what monospace text does is, for those smaller letters, you'll notice that there's an additional gap between the letters. Some of the wider letters, like here the M, there's not as much of a gap to the left and right of it. So like here the R looks like it's touching the M, same way with the A, but when you get here to the I, there's like additional space between the T and the N. Okay, because what the computer's doing is it's giving each letter the same amount of space, okay, where the individual letters can fit within. So bigger letters are going to take up more of that space. Smaller letters are going to take up less of that space. So the smaller letters, there's going to appear to be more of a gap. The bigger letters, there's going to appear less of a gap. All right, so that's just, once again, a style choice that you can always add to your pages if you wish. Okay, now we just have a couple additional font style rules to finish up. Okay, the next one is bold text. Okay, and we have done this already, but I want to show you how to do it using CSS. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make our paragraph bold. So we're going to go to our P tag. Within our curly brackets, we're going to add font-weight, bold. So font weight will allow you to change your text to bold, which is just going to make each individual letter heavier, thicker. Okay, so it's more pronounced, more distinguished on your page. So you can see that over here with the paragraph. Okay, we're going to add italic, and once again we have done this before, okay, but we're going to use embedded CSS to do it, and we're going to make our H3 tag italic. Okay, so the CSS rule is font-style, italic. Now when you say italics, you typically add the S to it, but when you're putting it in the coding, there's no S at the end. Okay, it's just italic. Okay, an italic font, you can see it here with the H3 tag. It's just kind of that slanted to the right appearance. Looks a little bit more cursive almost. Okay, so that is how we do it using CSS, font-style. Okay, and the last rule that I want to cover is changing the size of the fonts. Now, up until this point, we've only changed the size by making the font within an H1 tag or an H2 tag, and that would change the style size, all right? But we're not limited to using a heading tag to do that. We can change the size of any font using CSS. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our H1 tag, and we're going to change the size of it, okay? And you might say, well, that's as big as it can get. It's the H1 tag. That's the biggest thing there is. No, it's certainly not. You can take that H1 tag and you can make it bigger, or you could even make it smaller if you wanted to. All you have to do is add the font-size CSS rule. Okay, and let's go ahead and make our H1 tag 40 pixels. And we'll see, does that make it bigger or smaller? So take note of what it is right now. It got bigger, okay? Got significantly bigger, noticeably bigger, okay? So you are not limited anymore to how big your font is. You can make it as big as you want. You can make it 400 pixels, okay, just to play around. Save and I run. Okay, you can see it's absolutely massive. Okay, that would be probably too big for this particular page. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make it back to 40. Okay, and that's more appropriate. All right, one final time, let's go ahead and take our H2 tag just to show you that you can do this to any tag that you want to. We'll go ahead and we'll put in font-size 30px. Save and run. Okay, and you notice once again the H2 tag did get noticeably bigger. Okay, so that once again is another way to change the size of your fonts. All right, here's our last one. Okay, with the P tag, you can change the font size to 14 pixels. We'll save, we'll run. Now for this one, you're not going to notice much of a change because it got a little bit smaller, but it's because the existing size of the paragraph was pretty close to 14 pixels. Okay, it was a little bit bigger because when we changed it to 14 pixels, we noticed that it got smaller. So just to show you that you can make things bigger, you can make things smaller, depending upon how big a pixel count you put as your font size. All right, so we covered a lot of different CSS rules related to fonts. My recommendation would be go back, get comfortable with these, play around with them. You are going to get additional practice with your All About Me assignment, but just be comfortable with these because they do add a lot of customizable or ability to customize your pages and make things truly look unique, and that's really the focus with CSS. Now make sure that you submit this assignment to Canvas so that you can receive credit. All right, and this concludes the video.